Okay, the final character that I'm gonna get to is Chief. He's just basically the silliest character who just gets mad at the main character for causing chaos. Seriously, where am I remembering this from? Anyway, you think that he can't be a likable character, but later on, he really isn't. In fact, he's out of his mind most of the time. I mean, sometimes he can be smart, but sometimes he really isn't. Oh man, I really miss a lot from the show. I mean, I did watch some episodes while he was out of his mind in the early seasons when I was little, but I really forgot about those episodes. Man, even when I'm a fan of this franchise, I can easily forget about the earlier episodes. A lot. Most of this cast is just. I got nothing. I really got nothing to say about these characters. In fact, it's really weak. Why? Because most of these characters are just basically the stereotypes in the generic characters, like Slock, who's just basically the love interest of Locke, which could have been funny, except that was the second episode of the show. And it has a very weak start. Anyway, let me talk to you about the video games. Now, in the video games, it was taken seriously. It wasn't about goofing around. In fact, it's about taking down the bad guy and saving the world. In the first game, everyone was turned into sheep except for Japopa and Tak, who are the remaining survivors. And Tak is just trying to find some cures to get Locke back to normal, but apparently he got Resurrection's revenge, which means that Tak has to find 3 moonstones, and apparently when he gives back the moonstones to Japopa, the Moon Juju says that he's really the almighty warrior. In those games, Tak was a hero, but in the TV show he really isn't. And later on in the video games, he gets way smarter and more stronger. In fact, in the video games, he really actually feels like a very serious character, and people love Tak for that reason. He's more smart and more braver and more serious. He's more of a hero in the video games. That's why I consider him better than the TV show. However, in the TV show, this isn't like Tak at all. I mean, I know that they're trying to make a huge adaptation for the TV show, but however, it fails badly. You see, in the old games, he was a little longer, but in this show, he's 14 and he's still acting very lazy to do stuff like this. Just because it's a misadventure of cartoons doesn't mean that Tak needs to be completely lazy. It just doesn't work like that. In fact, I literally cannot see Tak in character in the show. And the staff that he uses, whenever he does some magical thing, it just turns to chaos and completely bad disasters. This is like Jimmy Neutron. It really isn't, except that it's about magic. I'm not making this up, this is serious. Seriously, this is really reminds me of another Nicktoon. Okay, let me give you some comparisons on this show and the cartoon. Unlike the Tak and the Power of Juju, Jimmy Neutron was actually good because everything was executed good. Because Jimmy was not 14, he was little. And not only that, this show was actually original. Seriously, I don't understand why Nickelodeon has to make another show about the same concept. And not only that, this show's reality makes sense. Because the franchise started with the movie, and it didn't start off with the games at all. It really didn't. Jimmy Neutron makes inventions that sometimes go haywire because he isn't 13. He's either 7 or 8. And I can understand that. And unlike the jokes in Tak and the Power of Juju, the jokes here are very hilarious. Because the characters were original, and back then, sometimes cliches can't be original. But in Tak and the Power of Juju, it just doesn't work. That's why some of the characters in this show works. And when Jimmy gets into trouble, it's mostly because of his inventions. Seriously, in Sending the Clones, he accidentally made a clone of himself of being evil, which actually makes sense. And the episodes like the Tomorrow Boys, even though that it wasn't intentionally his fault of making Libby's party a complete disaster, Libby doesn't agree with him because she already knows that Jimmy makes dumb inventions and very bad disasters. And unlike Tagging the Power of Juju, when it just started out with good characters, this show start off with good characters and keep continuing with it until the very end of the show. And don't talk to me about Planet Sheen because I do not want to talk about that show at all. Anyway, let me talk to you about the main good things about Jimmy Neutron. When they get into trouble, it's understandable because of Jimmy's inventions can go haywire and make very bad mistakes. And that's why I agree with that, because unlike the characters in Tagging the Power of Juju, the characters here are likable. And they're very funny and they actually know what to do. Not every character can be stupid or out of control. Some characters can be intelligent. The same unfortunately can't work in Tagging the Power of Juju. Because in the video games, not every Juju makes a return, and most of the new characters are considered stupid and very poorly written, like Chief. You may think he may be furious, but later on, he really isn't. Oh, man. Anyway, let me get into the episodes on why the characters are completely bad and poorly executed. The episode I'm going to talk about is Bad Luck's Back. You see in that episode, Tack is blamed for all the bad luck because of these two characters. I don't remember these characters' names because I can't remember any of the new characters from the show because these characters are just basically the characters who just cause chaos and that's it. These characters are basically cliched. And you know what I hate about this episode is that the fact they're giving Tack the blame, even though that he didn't do anything wrong in this episode. I know they're trying to portray him as the mess-up guy, but seriously, it just doesn't work. Unlike Jimmy Neutron, who is actually intelligent, this show makes Tack a complete idiot. Also, why do these two characters want to abandon Tack in the village? The fact that this is an entirely different show, I just can't take it seriously. I know that these characters are bullies, but they have no reason to abandon Tack in the village. In fact, that's just taking the punishment way too far. And when Tack turns these characters into sheep, they try to find them in order to tell the truth. They turn them into sheep, and then apparently that every sheep cannot talk. Tack needs to let every sheep in the pen talk so they can find where the real characters are. But that actually backfired when the sheep break the fence. And when everyone actually agrees with Tack, we get the ending, which is pretty rushed. And that ending is that every sheep from the pen escapes and wants nowhere to come back to the Pupanu village, and apparently this sheep says that there's a new horde. Okay, this is where I get mad. The pacing in the show is just rushful. What I mean by that, this clip is only 30 minutes after the last clip. And this show's rushing is just so bad. It wants to end on a good note, but it just ended on a poorly and badly note just seconds later. And you know what's the worst thing about this? Almost every single episode has poor rushing. And the characters here aren't really interesting, especially the main characters. In fact, the characters don't even get a reaction after when these two characters completely speak out the truth. This is why I really didn't like this episode, because the rushing is just too fast. Also in the episode, our favorite Juju, the Pupanu village is completely taken over by bugs because of this Juju, and another way to get the bugs out of the Pupanu village is that the Jujus have to sing a song to the Juju. That's basically it. You think that this is going to be a musical episode, but apparently it really isn't. Sure, there is argument in this episode, but the ending. Locke stomps on the bug Juju, and that's how the episode ends. There is no musical in this episode at all. Seriously, I'm not kidding. You know, you could have done that really earlier. I know that Bug Juju isn't hateable, but seriously. Oh my god, that's literally how the episode ends. This is just poorly writing by the writers who made this episode. Seriously, it really does. And you know what the worst thing about this episode? It's not watchable. It's boring and predictable. In fact, if you don't take anything seriously, then what are you supposed to take seriously? The fact that this bug is just causing chaos in the Pupanoo village? If so, then I do not agree that. And let me tell you about the episode where Tech loses his tooth. Now, he does agree with Chipopa of not using his magic, because it would cause consequences. And this is where I get really enraged. Now, the first two attempts, I can accept that, because usually attempts like this can show kind of humorous of the indestructibility that Tech said earlier in this episode, but the last attempt really made it worse. The first attempt is that Tech was pulling his tooth off a tree, which actually failed. And the second attempt is that he has to use an animal to pull the tooth out, which also failed. But the third attempt is pushing the boulder that connects the tooth onto Tech's jaw and push it off a cliff. Now, you may think, well, it's gonna work. It's gonna be pulled off. There's no way that it can go too far. But apparently it did. Apparently the tooth is still attached to Tech. Okay, this is taking it way too far. Seriously, stop making Tech into these serious situations. In fact, I know that this is supposed to be funny. Well, it isn't. In fact, it's actually disturbing and creepy and painful to watch. Especially seconds later, when Locke wants to do rock climbing because he wants some exercising and he pulls... Ugh. This is SpongeBob Splinter Pain worthy. Seriously. Oh my god. I'm not even going to talk about the rest of this episode because I don't blame Tag at all. Because the wires are trying to make his magic the main problem of the show, even though it's done really poorly and rushily. Seriously, I cannot agree anything of this. Let's get into the episode Girls Only, which makes Tech completely stupid, and the episode is just really lazy. In that episode, Tech wants to be in a cave where girls are only invited. And that's basically it. And most of this episode just contains of Tech wearing that disguise, and he can't take it off with everyone around him. That's what this episode is about, and Cluco's relationship between that is not funny. In fact, it's really disturbing. Unlike Jimmy Neutron's characters that are actually funny, especially Sheen, these characters aren't really hilarious. In fact, it's kind of creepy to look at. And the problem I have with this episode is that why would Tech either go to a village that is considered dedicated to girls? Seriously. I mean, I know that he has a crush on Jira, kind of, but seriously. The ending just made me really hate Tech a lot. In fact, he's so out of character. I mean, I know they're trying to make him completely goofy, but it just doesn't work that the character in the video games were really better. Seriously. I know that the episodes I'm talking about aren't really explaining much, but most of this episode is just generic. Really badly generic. And let me get into the Jujus of this show. The new Jujus.